It was supposed to be the end, the letters were read, the wedding bells were implied. The love triangle was finally resolved, and yet, here we are again. Because the summer I turned pretty is not done with us, season 4 is officially on the table, and based on everything the story left hanging, this trailer isn't about closure at all. It's about consequences, because when a story rushes its ending, the aftermath is always messy. And season 4 looks like it's ready to reopen. Every wound we thought had healed. The trailer doesn't start with romance. It starts with distance. Time has passed, but not enough to erase what happened. Belly and Conrad may be together now, but together does not automatically mean stable. That's the illusion season 3 tried to sell us. Season 4 immediately challenges it. We see Belly older, more grounded on the surface, but still carrying the same unresolved emotional patterns. She chose Conrad again, yes. But choosing someone and knowing how to stay with them are two very different things. And this season seems ready to explore that uncomfortable truth. What makes this continuation so tense is that the triangle may be over romantically, but emotionally it's far from finished. Jeremiah is no longer the obvious rival, but that doesn't mean he's healed. The trailer hints at a version of Jeremiah who is quieter, more distant, and far more unpredictable than before. Not angry in a dramatic way, but hurt in the kind of way that settles deep and changes you permanently, and that's actually more dangerous. Because unresolved hurt doesn't disappear. It waits. Conrad, on the other hand, is finally getting what he always wanted: Belly, stability, a future, but the trailer makes it very clear that he is terrified of losing it. Again, every look, every pause, every moment of silence between them carries the weight of their past. This isn't young love anymore. This is to people trying to prove that their choice was worth the damage it caused. And that pressure alone could destroy even the strongest relationship. Season 4 also seems to lean heavily into the idea of legacy. Susanna may be gone, but her influence hasn't faded. If anything, it's stronger than ever. The trailer subtly reminds us that many of the choices these characters made were never entirely their own. They were shaped by expectations, by stories told to them when they were too young to question them, and now, as adults, they're finally forced to ask themselves a terrifying question: what if the life we're living was never really our choice? Belly, especially, seems caught in this internal conflict. She says she's happy, she says she's sure, but the trailer shows moments of hesitation that feel impossible to ignore. Not because she doesn't love Conrad, but because she's starting to realize that love alone doesn't fix patterns. And Belly has a pattern: jumping before thinking, choosing intensity over stability, running toward feelings without fully understanding their consequences. Season 4 looks like the moment where that finally catches up to her. And then there's the world outside the triangle. Friendships feel strained, families feel distant. The beach house, once a symbol of comfort and nostalgia, now feels heavier, almost haunted by everything that happened there. The trailer frames it less as a safe place and more as a reminder of how much has been lost along the way. Growing up, it turns out, isn't just about finding love, it's about surviving the choices you made while chasing it. What makes this season feel different is its tone. It's quieter, heavier, more reflective. There's less fantasy and more reality, less summer magic and more emotional reckoning. The trailer doesn't promise fairytale romance. It promises difficult conversations, uncomfortable truths, and relationships being tested in ways they never were before. Because the real story doesn't end when the couple gets together, that's when it actually begins. And this is why season 4 feels necessary, not because fans wanted more, but because the story never truly finished what it started. Love was chosen, yes, but accountability wasn't, healing wasn't, closure wasn't. And if this season does anything right, it might finally answer the question the show has been avoiding since the beginning. Can love survive when it's built on years of confusion, pain, and shared history? This trailer doesn't give answers, it gives tension, it gives uncertainty. And most importantly, it gives the sense that someone is about to break, whether that's Belly, Conrad, or Jeremiah. That's what makes season 4 so dangerous and so impossible to ignore. Nothing in this trailer suggests peace. Season 4 doesn't move forward calmly, it drags the past with it. And the biggest shadow hanging over everything is Jeremiah. Because while season 3 tried to wrap him up neatly, with a last-minute romance and a forced smile, season 4 immediately exposes that illusion. Jeremiah is not fine, he's functioning. And there's a big difference. The trailer hints that Jeremiah has stepped into a new phase of his life, more independent, more distant, and far less emotionally available. He's not chasing anyone anymore, he's not fighting for Belly, and that alone should worry everyone. Because Jeremiah's pain was never loud like Conrad's, it was quiet, buried under jokes, loyalty, and self-sacrifice. Season 4 finally asks what happens when someone like that stops pretending. They're okay, and the answer doesn't look comforting. What makes this especially tense is that Jeremiah is still connected to them. Whether he wants to be or not, shared history doesn't disappear just because romance ends. The trailer shows subtle but loaded moments, brief eye contact, unfinished conversations, awkward silences where too much is being said without a single word. Jeremiah isn't trying to get Belly back. That chapter is closed, but closure doesn't mean forgiveness, and forgiveness doesn't mean healing. At the same time, Conrad and Belly are trying to build something real in the middle of emotional wreckage. And season 4 makes it clear that this relationship is no longer about passion. It's about endurance. Living together, planning ahead, making adult decisions. These are things their love has never been tested by before. Their past was all longing, distance, and tragedy. The present is far more demanding. It asks for patience, communication, and emotional maturity, areas where both of them have failed before. The trailer subtly suggests that Belly is starting to feel the weight of being the choice. Being chosen sounds romantic, until you realize it means living with the consequences of how that choice affected everyone else. She's no longer the girl caught between two brothers. She's the woman whose decision reshaped an entire family, and season 4 doesn't let her escape that reality. People don't hate her, but they don't look at her the same either. Conrad, meanwhile, appears more anxious than ever. He has what he wants, yet he's constantly bracing for loss. And that fear leaks into everything the trailer shows him. Hesitating, overthinking, holding back, not because he doesn't love Belly, but because he's terrified that loving her again could cost him everything. His brother, his stability, himself. And that kind of fear can quietly poison even the strongest bond. One of the most interesting shifts in season 4 is how romance is no longer idealized. The trailer doesn't frame love as the solution, it frames it as the problem that still needs solving. Loving someone doesn't automatically mean you're good for them. Choosing someone doesn't mean you're ready for them. And growing up doesn't erase the emotional damage you caused when you were younger. It only makes you more aware of it. There's also a strong sense that the characters are finally questioning the narratives they grew up with, the idea that some loves are meant to be, that certain endings are inevitable. Season 4 challenges that thinking hard. What if destiny was just pressure? What if love stories repeated not because they're romantic, but because no one ever stopped them? These questions linger heavily throughout the trailer, making everything feel more fragile than ever. And then there's the silence around Susanna. Her presence isn't loud this time, it's heavy. She's no longer the guiding voice pushing everyone toward a future she imagined. Instead, she's the reminder of how much influence one person can have over other people's lives even after they're gone. Season 4 seems ready to explore whether honoring someone's memory also means finally letting go of their expectations. By the end of this part of the trailer, one thing becomes painfully clear. Season 4 is not about falling in love, it's about living with love after the fantasy fades. It's about facing the emotional mess left behind when feelings were chosen over foresight. And it's about what happens when every character realizes that growing up doesn't give you answers. It only gives you harder questions. And the scariest part? Everyone seems to know that something is coming, they just don't know who it's going to break first. Time doesn't heal everything. Season 4 makes that painfully clear. Because as the trailer continues, it shifts focus from romantic tension to something far more unsettling: identity. Not who these characters love, but who they are when love is no longer enough to define them. And this is where the story starts to feel dangerous in a quiet, emotional way. Belly is no longer the dreamy girl drifting through summers. She's building a life now, career, responsibilities, routines. But the trailer suggests that the more structured her life becomes, the more she starts questioning it, not in a dramatic way, but in moments of silence, long pauses, stares that linger a second too long. Season 4 frames her as someone who got what she thought she wanted, only to realize she never asked herself why she wanted it in the first place. What's unsettling is how Belly's growth doesn't feel linear. She's more confident, yes, more independent, but the same emotional impulsiveness is still there, just hidden better. The trailer hints that she's starting to recognize this about herself. And that realization doesn't feel empowering, it feels frightening, because once you see your own patterns, you can't unsee them. And season 4 seems to push Belly toward a reckoning she's been avoiding for years. Conrad, meanwhile, is grappling with something equally heavy: purpose. His entire emotional journey has been about survival, surviving grief, guilt, expectations. But now that the chaos has settled, he's left with an uncomfortable emptiness. The trailer shows him questioning his direction, his choices, even his relationship. Not because he doesn't love Belly, but because love alone doesn't answer the question of who he is outside of her. And that uncertainty makes him withdraw, a habit that once again threatens to create distance, where there doesn't need to be any. What makes this dynamic so tense is that both of them are growing, but not in the same direction. Season 4 doesn't frame this as betrayal or falling out of love, it frames it as misalignment. Two people trying to evolve while holding onto a relationship that was built in a completely different version of their lives. And that kind of conflict is far more realistic and far more painful. The trailer also introduces a strong sense of external pressure. Friends are moving forward. Careers are taking shape. Lives are settling into paths that look stable from the outside. And suddenly, the characters who once defined everything by summer feel out of place. Like they missed the moment when things became serious. Season 4 leans into that discomfort. The fear of being left behind, of choosing the wrong life, of realizing too late that you followed a story that was never yours. Jeremiah's presence during all of this feels almost symbolic. He's no longer central to the narrative, yet his existence quietly influences every decision. He represents the version of the past that everyone is trying to move on from but never fully does. The trailer suggests that his journey this season is less about love and more about self-worth, about finally choosing himself instead of orbiting around other people's choices. And that shift alone has the power to change everything. One of the most striking things about Season 4's tone is how lonely it feels, even when characters are together. Conversations are shorter, smiles don't last as long. There's a sense that everyone is holding something back. Not secrets necessarily, but truths they're afraid to say out loud. Because once spoken, those truths might force changes they're not ready to face. The trailer doesn't tease dramatic twists or shocking reveals. Instead, it builds dread through realism, through moments that feel uncomfortably familiar. Loving someone but feeling unsure, achieving stability but missing excitement. Growing up and realizing that the life you're living doesn't quite fit the person you're becoming. Season 4 understands that these are the moments where people break, not in explosions, but in quiet decisions that change everything. And by the end of this section of the trailer, the message is clear. This season is about crossroads, not just in relationships, but in identity. Who do you become when the summer ends and there's no one left to blame but yourself? Some truths don't arrive loudly. They creep in slowly, disguised as routine. And in Season 4, that's exactly how everything begins to unravel. The trailer shifts again, this time toward confrontation, not explosive arguments, but long overdue conversations that can no longer be avoided because pretending only works. For so long, Belly and Conrad are no longer running from their issues, but they're not exactly facing them either. Season 4 places them in situations where avoidance isn't an option. Decisions about the future, where to live, what to prioritize. These are the questions that romance can't soften. And the trailer makes it painfully obvious that they don't always want the same answers. What once felt like destiny now feels like negotiation, and that's a dangerous transition for any relationship. The tension doesn't come from jealousy or love triangles anymore. It comes from fear of sacrifice. Who gives up what? Who compromises more? And at what point does compromise start to feel like losing yourself? Season 4 frames these dilemmas with brutal honesty. Loving someone doesn't mean you won't resent them later. And choosing a shared future doesn't mean both people are walking toward it with equal certainty. Jeremiah's storyline intersects with this tension in an unexpected way. He becomes a mirror rather than a rival. The trailer hints that his journey toward independence forces Belly and Conrad to confront their own stagnation. Watching someone step away from the past can be unsettling, especially when you're still living inside it. Jeremiah choosing himself highlights how much the others are still clinging to what's familiar, even when it no longer fits. There's also a subtle but powerful shift in how family dynamics are portrayed. The adults, once distant or idealized, now feel more present and more flawed. Parents question choices. Expectations resurface. The weight of responsibility settles in. Season 4 reminds us that growing up doesn't just change relationships between lovers. It reshapes the bond between children and the people who raised them. And those shifts aren't always gentle. The trailer repeatedly returns to the beach house, but not as a place of escape. It's framed as a crossroads. A space filled with memories that no longer feel comforting, only heavy. Every room carries echoes of who these characters used to be. And Season 4 seems determined to ask whether holding onto that nostalgia is healing or harmful. Because sometimes refusing to let go is what keeps you stuck emotionally. This season feels more restrained, but also more intense. Feelings aren't screamed, they're swallowed, and that restraint creates pressure. The kind that builds until something inevitably cracks. The trailer suggests that someone will eventually say the thing everyone has been avoiding. And when that happens, there's no going back to how things were before. What's especially striking is how Season 4 refuses to paint anyone as the villain. Everyone is trying, everyone is flawed, and everyone is afraid of making the wrong choice. The conflict isn't about right versus wrong, it's about timing, growth, and whether love can survive when people evolve at different speeds. That moral grayness makes every decision heavier and every outcome more uncertain. By the end of this part of the trailer, the sense of inevitability becomes hard to ignore. Change is coming. Not because someone wants it, but because standing still is no longer an option. And the closer these characters get to the lives they're supposed to build, the more they're forced to ask themselves a question that has no easy answer. Is staying together an act of love or fear? At some point, every story stops asking, "Who do you love?" and starts asking, "What does that love cost you?" Season 4 reaches that point without warning. The trailer grows heavier, slower, almost uncomfortable, as if it knows that whatever comes next will permanently change how we see these characters. The emotional core of the season seems to revolve around consequences finally catching up. Not dramatic punishments, but quiet realizations, the kind that hit late at night, when there's no one left to distract you. Belly begins to understand that being self-aware doesn't automatically mean being accountable. Admitting mistakes is easier than changing behavior, and Season 4 forces her to confront the damage left behind by choices she once justified as following her heart. What makes this especially painful is that Belly isn't portrayed as cruel or careless. She's portrayed as human, flawed. Someone who learned to equate intensity with love and confusion with passion. The trailer hints that she's now questioning whether she ever learned how to build something steady. And that fear, the fear of not knowing how to love in a healthy way, lingers over every scene she's in. Conrad's arc deepens in a different direction. He's no longer fighting external loss, he's fighting internal doubt. The trailer shows him wrestling with the idea that he might be repeating his parents' mistakes without realizing it, choosing silence instead of vulnerability, control instead of honesty. Season 4 suggests that Conrad's greatest challenge isn't losing Belly. It's becoming someone he doesn't recognize while trying to keep her. Jeremiah's role becomes unexpectedly pivotal here, not as a romantic obstacle, but as a symbol of what walking away looks like. His growth isn't flashy, it's lonely. The trailer frames his independence as both empowering and isolating, a reminder that choosing yourself often means being misunderstood. And in a quiet way, his distance forces the others to face a hard truth. Sometimes the healthiest choice is the one that hurts the most. There's also a sense that the past is no longer something they can rewrite. Memories don't soften, they sharpen. Old moments are recontextualized, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. Season 4 doesn't romanticize what came before, it interrogates it. And that interrogation makes the present feel fragile, like one honest conversation could collapse everything. The trailer builds toward a turning point, not a single event, but a shift in emotional gravity. Characters begin to say less, but mean more. Decisions are delayed, not because they don't matter, but because they matter too much. Season 4 understands that sometimes the scariest moments aren't when things fall apart, but when they almost do, and everyone can feel it. What's most haunting is the realization that love may not be the final answer this time. The trailer suggests that staying together isn't guaranteed, and neither is breaking apart. The outcome feels intentionally uncertain, because the show isn't asking us to root for an ending anymore. It's asking us to sit with the discomfort of growth. By the time this section of the trailer fades, the emotional stakes are clear. Someone will have to choose honesty over comfort. Someone will have to let go of a version of the future they've been clinging to, and when that choice is finally made, it won't feel like a victory. It will feel like the end of an era and the beginning of something no one fully prepared for. Nothing about this ending feels easy, and that's exactly why. Season 4 feels different from everything that came before it. The trailer doesn't promise happiness. It doesn't promise heartbreak either. What it promises is truth. The kind of truth that doesn't wrap itself in romance or nostalgia. The kind that forces people to finally stop running. By the time we reach the final moments hinted at in the trailer, it's clear that this story is no longer about choosing between brothers, or even choosing love. It's about choosing who you are when no one else is deciding for you. Belly stands at the center of that realization, not as the innocent girl from earlier seasons, and not as the confident woman she tried to become overnight, but as someone finally forced to sit with the weight of her own choices for the first time. There's no summer magic left to hide behind. Conrad, too, reaches a breaking point that doesn't look dramatic on the surface, but feels devastating underneath. The trailer suggests a moment where he realizes that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. And if it does, then something is wrong. Whether he walks toward Belly or away from her isn't framed as right or wrong. It's framed as necessary, and that's what makes it hurt. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying. It's admitting that love alone isn't enough to fix what's broken inside you. And Jeremiah's journey quietly becomes one of the most powerful arcs of all. Not because he wins or loses, but because he finally steps out of a story that kept hurting him. The trailer paints his ending not as closure but as release. A reminder that healing doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with distance, with silence, with choosing peace over being chosen. What makes this final stretch so emotional is the understanding that everyone is growing up at the same time, and growing apart is part of that process. The beach house no longer feels like a beginning or an ending. It feels like a memory you visit one last time before moving on. Summer in this season isn't eternal, it's fleeting. And that's the point. Season 4 doesn't aim to give us a perfect conclusion. It aims to give us an honest one where love is complicated, where mistakes aren't erased, where people don't become villains or heroes, they simply become human. And maybe that's the most heartbreaking, beautiful part of all. Because it reminds us that some stories don't end with certainty, they end with acceptance. As the trailer fades out, one message lingers louder than anything else: growing up means living with your choices, not rewriting them. And no matter how much you wish you could stay in summer forever, eventually you have to step into what comes next. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Belly and Conrad are truly meant to last this time? Or is season 4 preparing us for a goodbye we've been avoiding since the very beginning? If you enjoyed this deep breakdown and want more updates, theories, and emotional analysis on The Summer I Turned Pretty, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. This is Telly Boss 2, and trust me, the story isn't over yet.